Hello composers, Mike here, and this video is about how to compose adventure music. I have invited my good friend Christopher, who is an amazing composer of adventure type music in the style of Disney or adventure video games, etc. He will give you practical tips and insights on composing adventure music. So let's dive in right now.
Hey everybody, hope you're having an awesome day today. So in the video today, I'm going to be talking about how to write, adventure fantasy style music. And I'm going to be using one of my original tracks as an example. It's called A New Beginning. I wrote it last year. So let's get into it. I've also written kind of a document of rules that I like to follow. And I find that if you follow these like guidelines, I would say, they're not hard, fast rules, but these, can kind of keep you safe within the fantasy and adventure genre. So what I was thinking we could do is kind of listen to a little bit of it, and then I'll kind of get into the some of the points that I wrote down. So let's listen to A New Beginning. Here we go. All right, so let's just stop there. So right away, there's a few things you'll note actually. In terms of melody, I try to keep it short and sweet and somewhat, or basically as memorable as possible. And the way I like to do that is by using repetition whenever possible. Now, repetition it's kind of a fine balance because you don't want to take one motive and repeat it too much that it becomes boring. But again, you don't want to take a motive that's overly long and then repeat it after a long period of time. So, I find choosing something that's maybe 4 to 8 bars and then taking that melody and repeating it maybe in a different key or using different instrumentation can be especially effective for a memorable melody. And so in terms of the melody by itself, I think that moving stepwise is a very good way to have a good melody now and then. But also what's really important is to have the occasional leap to make it memorable. So if I sing like da 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 da, you'll likely remember the parts with more leaps, right? When you have stuff that's more stepwise, up or down, doesn't really matter. The audience tends to hear it as one really beautiful single line, but taking leaps is more like taking a risk of some sort. It's harder to do for the human voice. It's much easier to just go from one step to another. So, taking leaps, like, anything from, I would say, a fifth, a sixth, or a seventh above, that can kind of take you into the interesting territory. All right. So it's not just melody, though. It's also the rhythmic contrast that you have to think about. So if you keep everything quarter notes, for example, it's going to start sounding really bland after a while. So you might want to mix in some eighth notes. You might want to mix in some triplets, now and then. Things that will just throw it off a little bit and keep it interesting. So just for example, I'll just play you, this melody here, the main theme, and show you what I mean. So after my intro, so I start off with an interval of a fourth. I didn't want to start directly on the tonic note, by the way. This is in F major, so I started on a C, which is the dominant note. I went from C to F. There's already a little bit of a leap there, so it's kind of like you're stepping up to something, And then it goes down. Now that stepped up a minor seventh. Do, do, do. So I'm already taking a little bit of a leap already. It's about a seventh, and it's not like an octave that's like really, really high, but it's not like a sixth or below that's also, not very interesting. So, I took an interval of a seventh there, which kind of established that, to our ears, it kind of spreads out a little bit, and it's sort of adventurous in a way. Like, you're not just staying within the steps. So we're taking a little bit of adventure here, okay? What else here? Oh, you'll also note that a lot of the notes stay within the key of F major. This was a conscious decision. I didn't want to go too far away from F major. I wanted to have it somewhat predictable and something that the audience could hold on to without feeling lost. I wanted them to feel like, they could follow along quite easily to this theme. So these notes in a melody. So for all of these notes are in F major, right? So as we continue on, now there's a little bit of harmony added underneath the strings. Now the harmony, now that chord changed there a little bit. Instead of going to F major, it actually went to F minor. Now F minor introduces A flat in there, and in the F major scale, we don't have A flat. So this already now introduces a little bit of extra interest, and to the listener's ear, we kind of wonder, what's just happened? Something new has just, gone on. So then we transitioned from F major to D flat major, and to me, it doesn't really matter to which key you go to, whether it's a closely related key or not. But as long as you find a smooth transition to get there, that makes it sound seamless and not forced, it can be especially effective. So I wrote here in the harmony that diatonic chords are a safe option, and it keeps the audience familiar with their tonal center. You can experiment with different modes, such as the Lydian mode, which is where we have the sharp fourth in the major scale. Like I said here, I use the minor 4 in this piece to kind of start that transition to D flat major. I wasn't thinking of specific modes or anything like that, but I was just thinking of the melody in my head, actually. I was thinking the melody first, and then I was trying to put the chords together with that melody and finding out which chords kind of fit best to match it. So that was kind of what I was going for there. I'll come back to structure. Let's talk about instrumentation for a second. So for fantasy and adventure kind of music, it can range anywhere from pure orchestral stuff to hybrid orchestral, which includes electronic elements. And it's rarely purely electronic. When it does get to pure electronic stuff, that's more of the thriller, maybe action type of stuff. But for more fantasy type of music, we tend to use more orchestral instruments. And it gives us a familiar feeling. So we feel comforted, we feel safe in a way, hopefully that makes sense. And we also feel nostalgic. So using the typical instruments of the orchestra is very common. Let's see here. The instruments that you choose for the main melody are very important, as the other instruments can be used for contrast when the melody is using or holding longer notes or taking a break. So for example, let's just see here. Okay, so to listen to this brass melody, when it holds the long note, you're going to hear the strings do a run up and run down. Right, so as the brass was holding, the strings are going, and then the woodwinds came in at the last second, went, so, those different sections of the orchestra are all interplaying together, and I think that's really important when you have this kind of style of music. So it always feels like something is moving and there's always something to look forward to. Momentum is just so crucial in this style of music that it pushes us forward and it makes us feel like we're engaged in the actual performance. In terms of the arrangement, having proper voice leading is very crucial. So, if you have a 3 or 4 part chord, make sure those voices resolve naturally and correctly to the next chord. And this all comes back down to classical rules. When you have SATB voicing, so soprano, alto, tenor, bass, when they all have their separate voices, when they go from one chord to the next, they all want to transition smoothly to the next chord. They don't want to have to jump, up a fifth or down a fourth for each chord they're going to. Most preferably they go maybe a second or a third, or maybe even a fourth, but that's pretty much it. So smooth voicing is what we want to keep in mind, and we don't want things to jut out and sound abrupt. So keep that in mind. You also want to respect the ranges of the instruments. So, if you don't want to go into violent territory with the cello, unless you really wanted to do that, but each instrument has their own sweet spot. So just make sure you respect the range of each instrument. And if you stick within that most comfortable range, then you'll get probably the most comfortable and best sounding results, I would say. Like I already mentioned before, the melody holding longer notes gives you room for the other instruments in other families and other timbres to fill in the gap. And a natural sense of dynamics is very important, of course, because we want it to feel like a real orchestra is playing and not just like music that's completely overcompressed and you can't hear any sense of dynamics. So that's super important. Now, one of the most important things is actually structure. You can have a wonderful piece of music that's very catchy and all that, but what holds it all together? It's really the structure. So the structure I used in this piece is I did an A section, then I restated the theme. So I basically saying A is my theme. Then the B section is a bridge of some sort. So that's after this main theme here. And now here's the bridge. So you notice it's kind of has a development function, right? Now I just modulated to E major. And now I'm going to A major. Oh, back to E major. And now what's going to happen next? We don't quite know yet until we hear this chord. So that's it. So that was an F suspension chord, F sus4. It has F, B flat, C, and usually sus chords have the function of resolving that sustained or suspended note down. So if it's a sus4, it'll resolve to the third of the chord, which you get over here. Before it goes to A. And then that basically becomes an F major chord. So when you go from F, B flat, C to F, A, C, that gives you the F major chord, and the F major chord is serving a dominant function to the tonic, which is now B flat major. So that leads us into the C section, okay? And that is basically another theme, kind of the chorus, if you will. I come from like a songwriting background, so I like to introduce like a verse theme, a bridge of some sort, and then the C is kind of like where everything accumulates to a big finale, if you will. And then after that, here's the finale, the final statement. Now you could just end your piece there. You could wrap it up in a pretty little bow, but again, it's really about what you're aiming for. So I was heavily inspired by Super Mario Galaxy, and the video game structure really followed this format, or I followed the video game format of those games where they did the exact same thing. They had a main theme, they had a bridge, they had a chorus, and then they did a loop back, like a passage that loops back to the A section at the beginning. So that's what I did here. I did this once and then I ended it with its own ending. So this is what it sounds like. So now I basically modulated from B flat major back to F major, and that wasn't too difficult to do because they are closely related keys. F major has one flat, B flat, and B flat major has two flats. So all I needed to do was take out the E flat, replace it with E natural in the horns, and then it just led back easily back to F major to the main theme. Now to end it, that's a different matter, so you can just do whatever comes to mind. So in this case, what I did was I went, instead of going from 5 to 1, from F major to B flat major, I went from F up a half step to G flat major. So that's basically flat 6 of B flat major. Then I went to flat 7, which is A flat major, and then I went to tonic. So then I just went up, and up until I got to the tonic. And that's how I got that uplifting feeling that basically pushed us up to the very top, and the climax ended there. And it's just, it just has a big finale to it, and that's the whole thing. So I think one thing to really keep in mind is melody. Keeping a memorable melody is super important because it will keep the listener engaged, and it'll also have them humming it and coming back for more later. Keeping it diatonic is a safe option, like I mentioned before, which basically just means keeping it within the major scale. Playing around with non-diatonic notes can be a good option if you're trying to throw in an extra little flavor in there, which you can do. But again, don't overdo it just because each adventure theme, I feel, has its own centered key. So the more you stick to that, the better. In terms of structure, again, be very conscious about that and choose something that you feel that will still capture the listener's attention without having them be distracted or lose their attention. Instrumentation, mainly stick with orchestral stuff. You can use trailer type of libraries as well, like the Metropolis Arc series. But I typically stick with, the Berlin series and the Cinesamples stuff and the Cinematic Studio instruments as well. And then finally, in terms of arrangement, just respect the instrument ranges. Make sure you have good voice leading so you don't that you don't have like one cello line jumping from a C down to like a D or something if it's a harmonic thing. You'll have the braces to do that, to take that lower part. So just make sure you have smooth voice leading. And then in terms of the mix and all that, just make sure the dynamics are maintained so you have a sense of excitement, but you also have a sense of pulling back now and then. This all contributes to a big, epic, well, I don't want to use the word epic, but an effective piece of music should have dynamics to it. So yeah, that's basically it. I mean, hopefully this has helped a little bit. Using my piece as an example because Mike actually, asked me to do an article on writing adventure music, and I did that a while ago. So I wanted to use the same piece as kind of as a video guide, if you will. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thanks again, Mike, for having me, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a good day, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Christopher, for sharing your tips, experience, and insights on my YouTube channel. I will, of course, add links to Christopher's YouTube channel, website, etc. in the video description, so please check that out. And I will see you in the next video, my friends.